Around Alcoholics Anonymous long enough, you finally hear something that's true. Nora, in her announcement over here, she said the Mosque Paw Committee needs help, and that's true. You should have been there for the pie throw. It was magnificent. Looked like I'd been beaten with an axe. They used a cherry pie on me, and I've thought about this long and hard. I have concluded that people like me less than they like Teresa. They bid more for my pie. But as Tony told you, apparently Tony hit me with the pie. And his technique was to start down at the chin and go heavily up the face, up over the top of the head. And while the pie was traveling up my face, I got both nostrils full of the filling. I don't think I got any cherries up either one. But apparently I didn't expel all of the cherry filling adequately. And I got some over here in this sinus cavity, and my face did swell. And I didn't know exactly what happened. I came up with a lot of different things. I didn't have any pain with it, but I had a sense of unwell-being. And somehow it moved up here to this sinus cavity, and I got a tremendous headache, and I thought, good God, I'm having a stroke. That's what the swelling is all about. And then it finally came to me that this is what had happened to me. I never consult a doctor unless I can't get out of bed, and but I finally diagnosed myself, and as soon as I knew what was wrong, I got immediately well. It's important to learn from every experience, and this experience taught me that I need to act my age, which doesn't include getting hit in the face with pies. So from now on, I'm going to confine all of my childish activities to being in a dunking booth at the District 3 picnic. Also sponsored, the dunking booth being sponsored by the people who need help, the Mosque Paw Committee.
Can you say it a different word, please?
We have a couple of committee members here who apparently are thin-skinned. I want to tell a joke. I'd forgotten I knew this joke. I told it about 5 years ago at the Sweetheart Dance. And when you tell a joke, a good joke, people tend to repeat it. And if you repeat, you've told it originally, and then you repeat it, people start saying, "Oh my God, he's telling that joke again." And I think enough time has passed that I can tell this joke again without getting a lot of oh no's. And it's about a guy that dies and goes to heaven, and I love dead people that go to heaven, and I love the jokes about them. He goes to heaven, and St. Peter meets him at the gate. St. Peter says, things are pretty relaxed around here. He says, you don't have to do much. He said, but there's a couple of decisions you have to make. He said, one of the first things is you have to decide where you want to stay. And the dead man says, well, what are my choices? St. Peter said, well, let's go over here and I'll open this door and you can peek in, see what's going on. So St. Peter opens the door and the man looks in, and there's a bunch of people just working their rosaries, praying like hell. Nobody laughed at the Catholic part last time either. And the man says, well, I don't believe I'd like it in here. He says, who are these people? And he said, well, these are Catholics. And they don't believe they're in heaven, and they're praying to get here. So he says, no, I don't believe I'd be happy in there. So St. Peter says, well, come over here and we'll look in here. And he opens the door. And there's a bunch of people just sitting ramrod straight, staring straight ahead. Guy says, good Lord, I don't think I'd like it in here either. Who are these guys? He says, well, they're mostly Baptists and Methodists. They don't like the way things are going around here. And they're on a sit-down strike until we make some changes. He said, some of those people have been sitting like that for 500 years. And he says, no, he said, I don't like that. So St. Peter says, well, here's one more. He opens the door and the smell of fresh coffee and cigarette smoke just rolled out. And the guy looked inside and there was a bunch of people laughing and running around and acting silly and goosing each other and talking dirty. The guy, he said, well, this looks pretty good in here. Who are these people? St. Peter said, you know, it's a funny thing, but we don't know. And they won't tell. But we leave them alone because they're only staying one day at a time. Well, now I can't tell that for another 5 years. Unless everybody in here promises not to repeat it. And I might be able to tell it in 3. Well, tonight, I have every hope of being able to wind this thing up. That'd probably bring a great sigh of relief for many of you. It's taken a long time. I think I started on January the 4th, somewhere around there. And we're going to talk about chapter 7 in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, titled Working with Others. And I don't know why you came to Alcoholics Anonymous, but I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I didn't want to have to drink anymore. Have to drink anymore. And the first sentence says, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. So that had to come to mean something to me. Because I didn't want to have to drink anymore. And it says that if I'm looking for a magic formula, I'll follow the directions that are in this book and pass it on. That for God's own reason, I've been chosen to be sober so another alcoholic can learn how. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. We can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. And let's go back on page 18 in the chapter there is a solution. And we read some things in chapter 2 and chapter 3 But we didn't read this. And it's the paragraph on page 18 that is all in italics. When things appear in italics, it is to provide emphasis in case the reader is not aware that the author intended emphasis. It's, hey, dumb shit, pay attention. And this whole paragraph is in italics, and it says, but the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, the solution that's in this book, this spiritual remedy, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. If you were here in the early meetings when I was talking about the history in the early days of the fellowship, remember that Bob Smith, the guy on the right, Dr. Bob, was a medical doctor. And Bill Wilson, the guy on the left, was a stockbroker. And Bill had been drinking himself to death, and he had found a way to stay sober in the Oxford groups. Bob was drinking himself to death, and it utterly ruined his reputation as a physician and his standing in the community. Bob knew all he needed to know in order to stay sober. He was a learned man. He was an intelligent man. Not until Bill Wilson, another alcoholic, came into his life, who was armed with the facts and who suffered from the same disease, was Bill able to learn how not to drink one day at a time and to help others. Nobody in the fellowship has ever helped as many alcoholics as Dr. Bob Smith. He personally treated free of charge, either spiritually or medically, over 5,000 alcoholics. The man not only believed, he gave. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And I want to refresh your memory if you've forgotten or if you're here for the first time or missed this comment previously. This book was originally written, and it has not been altered in any form since 1939, with the exception of the addition and the deletion of some of the personal stories in the back. This book was written as a 12-step tool to be sent to a man that was outside of either New York, Akron, or Cleveland, where the fellowship first started, so that he could get this book, read it, follow the directions to the best of his ability, following the advice in here, and go out and form his own fellowship. That's how Alcoholics Anonymous got started. So as we're reading chapter 12, remember that this book is talking primarily about a man working all alone, what he needs to do to form his own fellowship in order for him to stay sober. Now, so some of this information in here may not make sense unless you understand that, and it may seem dated in certain places, but the information here is nevertheless valid. We are fortunate enough to have a fellowship in place that we can just walk into and sit down. And we don't have to go through the things that the pioneer people in this fellowship went through in order to learn how to save their lives. And I talked about it the last time I spoke 2 weeks ago, about the responsibility that I feel like that I need to take in this fellowship, because somebody made sure that it was here when I needed to walk in and sit down. And I need to make sure it's here when the next guy needs to walk in and sit down. So this is a glimmer of the first rule that is repeated in this chapter 7. First rule of working with other people, with other alcoholics, and carrying this message is to love the alcoholic. And I've talked about this before in this meeting also. You know, everybody that comes here, everybody that stays here, everybody that leaves here is a sick person. No one comes here and has a recovery that takes away the disease. My disease has been arrested one day at a time. I don't have to live in the disease today. If I follow these directions, I can live with the disease. But I'm still as sick a human being as I ever was. Some of us aren't too lovable. Some of us are sicker than others. But if I don't love the sick ones, the sicker ones, the sickest ones, who will? It's a disease of loneliness. It's not a disease of drinking. It's a disease of loneliness. Nothing will cure it. Nothing will cure it but love and laughter. Fellowship is love and laughter. It's the medicine. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. And here's some of the dated part of this. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or a reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. To be helpful. That is a lot different from being a savior. It's a subtle distinction. But we are to be helpful. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And it's already 8:30, and I've got about 3 more hours to talk on this chapter. And I've finished the first page. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. So what it's saying is, don't proselytize people just because, in your opinion, they drink too much. And I think, and I want to make this distinction, we talked about this early on about the definition of the guy that drinks too much and the guy that's a problem drinker, and about the real alcoholic. You know, it's possible. Alcoholism has a clinical definition. It is a disease. You know, it is possible to abuse alcohol and not be an alcoholic. I've known many people in my life that for one reason or another, they drank entirely too much, either on a single evening or over a course of several years. And it may have appeared to a lot of people that they had a problem drinking that they could never recover from, but something happened. They just said, well, I'm married now and I'm not going to drink anymore, or I'm a little older now and I'm not going to have that kind of fun anymore. Wait till I finish. So, you know, even though they were a problem drinker, they weren't an alcoholic. So, don't try to convince people to stop drinking. That's not the way I'm supposed to be helpful. You've heard it around the program that this isn't for people who need it. It's for people who want it. I can't exhaust myself trying to convince people to stop drinking, either foolishly or alcoholically. That's not my role in life. They're entitled to drink whatever they want, wherever they want, whatever they want, with whom and when. It's none of my business. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others, and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. Okay, now this is about the single guy out there trying to start his own fellowship, but this information is valid also to somebody that walks in the door and talks to the person on the phone and says, I'm drinking too much, can somebody help me? You know, that's the type of situation that we find ourselves in today within the fellowship. Generally, they're coming to us. We don't go search them out. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit. But say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles alcohol has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his own. This is the second rule of working with another alcoholic. Read his mood. I can say and do things to a man who has just beaten the hell out of his wife that I can't say and do if he wants to beat the hell out of his wife. He's going to have two entirely different moods, and my approach has to be one that his mood will receive. I can't have a canned stock set of answers, tone of voice, facial expressions that will work for anybody. It's got to work for the man that's right eyeball to eyeball with me. And I've got to be perceptive. I've got to know when I'm talking to him, and I'm talking to a guy that wants to get sober, not somebody who's been around here for 10 years, or 10 weeks, or 10 months. A guy that wants to get sober. I've got to be sensitive to what's on his mind so that I can put my story in a way that he can receive the information. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of the spree. We suggest that you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it, and be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusions. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can if he is not too alcoholic. But insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. So, by talking about my own experiences, I am able to let him make a decision on his own as to whether or not he is an alcoholic. I am not in a position to diagnose anyone. Either I think I am, based upon the information that I have in hand, or I don't think that I am. And it doesn't make any difference if I am, if I don't think I am, then there's no help available for me. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of the body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You know, it's a hell of a thing to tell somebody that they're doomed if you don't have any help to offer them. And I went to doctors, I went to psychiatrists, I went to clinical psychologists, and there was not one of them told me anything other than I needed to cut down on my drinking. Good advice. I just couldn't do it because they didn't have any solutions for me. They knew what I should do, but they couldn't help me. One of them told me, well, I'll give you some Valiums if you promise not to drink with them. I said, if I drink, what the hell do I need the Valiums for? What's the point? You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, the traits of an alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question, if he will. Italics. Tell him exactly what happened to you. If he asks, tell him exactly what happened to him. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not, italics, does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. Italics. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. And I say it over and over and over, and probably said it over and over in this meeting too, and probably some people are going to say, oh no, he's going to say it again. It doesn't make any difference what I believe, but it does make a difference what I do. And if I live by spiritual principles, then I will believe what I need to believe in order to live my life sober one day at a time. I don't think my way into right actions. I act my way into right thinking. Here's the third rule. It's tell the truth. It says tell the man the truth about the disease, about yourself, and about him, if he asks. Remembering that truth without love is cruelty and stupidity. Just because I am committed to tell the truth doesn't mean that I have to tell everything that I know. Not right then. I only give the man as much truth based upon his mood as I think he can chew at that one time. I've seen people 12-step, and they walk out of this office with an armload of books saying, God damn, I can't, what's a 4-step? Shit, I'm not sober yet. And I got them down on a 4-step, you know. Seen it happen over and over again. Thundering down from the hilltop. You know, and that's not how you help people recover from the disease of alcoholism. This is how you help people. Only as much truth as they can digest in any one sitting. Only as much truth as they need in order to make a decision. Only as much truth as they need in order to know what their problem is. Right then. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. Now's not the time to wax philosophical about spiritual principles. There is no use arousing any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. If he walked in the door, he is spiritually sick, and I'll guarantee you he is confused about certain theological terms and conceptions. He wouldn't come around here if he wasn't. Neither would she. That was to make things gender equal. People are slow tonight. Don't raise such issues no matter what your own convictions are. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. To be vital. To be vital means for it to be alive, for it to be real, for it to mean something, for it to have substance. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. Faith without works is dead. It must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. And if you want to go back to page 14, the books are probably worked slick from flipping back to page 14, but here it is again. I don't ever want to forget this. That's why I asked you to read it with me. First paragraph says, simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. And it's telling me that I have to make self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action in order to destroy self-centeredness that's killing me. And a demonstration of that in my life is working with other alcoholics. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religious matters, in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you do, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, he could not have applied it or he would not drink. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most dominant denominations. And I think we talked about this, the 4 or 5 examples in step 2 that people have to, one or the other, or many of them, that people have to overcome in order to take step 2. These ideas of atheism or agnosticism, these ideas of religion having failed, these ideas of having failed religion, etc., etc. So, it's very interesting, I think, to talk to people with a lot of religious training. Because they have a tremendous amount of knowledge in spiritual matters, but they still have the same spiritual sickness that I do. And in order to and to help them show how to put what they already know into action is really a lot of fun for them and for me, or for anybody that helps. I didn't come here with any particular training in spiritual matters. I learned everything I know here, whatever that might be. But a lot of people do come here and know a lot of things, and they can be shown how to use it properly so that they can get some changes in their life. Outline the program of action explaining how you made a self-appraisal, how you straightened out your past, and why you are now endeavoring to be helpful to him. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. Make it plain that he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he place the welfare of other people ahead of his own. self-sacrifice, unselfish, constructive action. Place the welfare of other people ahead of his own in order to stay sober one day at a time. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. The only reason I ever talk to anybody is because it helps me. You know, I know what I get out of it. I don't know what the other person gets out of it. That's not my business. I know what it does for me. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning which requires discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. When you first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of the book. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. If you do stay, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later on, he is likely to say you rushed him. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusade or reform. Listen to this. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of tools for his inspection. Show him how they worked with you, offering friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help.